Hello and welcome to Cooking the Books with Heather. Today we're going to continue working out of the Deep Run Roots cookbook, Vivian Howard's cookbook. And it's Thanksgiving this week in the United States, and so we are going to make her Pecan-Chewy pie. Pecan pie is something that we have in my house wherever we go for Christmas or Thanksgiving. We always have a Pecan-Chewy pie. No, not a Pecan-Chewy pie. We have a pecan pie, traditional pecan pie. Usually we use his grandmother's recipe, but we're going to try this year. It's just us, the whole thing. We're not supposed to travel. We're just going to have the family here. So it's a time when we can experiment a little bit. Plus it sounds really good. So I have my oven preheated to 350 degrees, and this is going to make supposed to be 8-inch pies. My pie tins, I think one's a 10 and one's a 9. I'm sure it will be fine. Might be a little bit thinner of a crust, but whatever. So you can also make it in a 9x13 like casserole dish, and that'll be fine. I'm probably going to freeze one because there's no way we can eat 2 whole pies with everything else we're going to be eating on Thanksgiving or this whole week. So let's get started. We're going to make the crust and the streusel. So I'm going to start with some sugar. The little brown bits, if you can tell, those are just because I used the same measuring cup as I used for my pecans. No problem. Those are going in the same thing, so no problem. I have just plain all-purpose flour. And now I have quite a lot of very finely chopped pecans. She says they should resemble coarse grits. So you could probably pulse these in a food processor. We have a nut grinder that we use that makes pretty small pieces, as you can see. So we're gonna start by stirring this together and getting it all mixed up. And now the other ingredient I still have in the refrigerator because it is supposed to be cold. So I have some butter. I use unsalted butter. She does not specifically say, but usually I use unsalted butter in baking. So I have some unsalted butter that I have cut into smaller pieces because we are going to be basically kind of like making a pastry crust with this, but we're going to be cutting this in using either a fork or cold hands because you're going to try not to melt this butter, or a pastry cutter, which is what this is. You can also use this to chop nuts, but it makes a lot of noise on the bowl and whatever. So you're supposed to be cutting the butter in until it all resembles pebbly sand. So I'm gonna be doing this for just a little bit. So I think this is pretty good. My husband has corrected me and he calls this a collard chopper, but it can also be used as a pastry cutter. I think it works better than the one that I have that's sort of just steel bands, bent steel bands. Looks kind of like a U on a handle like this. This works a whole lot better. I used to use like 2 butter knives, so if you don't have any of that, you can use that as well. And now the only thing that I have to add to this is some egg and a little bit of water and whisk together. She doesn't say to whisk these together, but then you add them at the same time, so it doesn't matter, and it's easier to whisk the egg when there's stuff in it. So I'm just gonna pour this in and stir it until the mixture is damp. I do wonder, considering I always seem to need more water, whether with my flour just, I don't know if it's extra dry or what, but it's hard to, I always feel like I need more water than I should in a recipe. But I'm gonna try not to add any water, we'll see. I mean, some of it's damp, there's not a whole lot of dry, and the butter will melt to help hold it all together, so. I'm gonna use my hands and see if I think it'll hold together. It's a little dry. I think I'm gonna add a little more water. Should be fine. Okay, so I added like double the amount of water that she called for, but it was still not a lot. I'm going to get my pie dishes. I'm going to go ahead and just bring one over and show you how to do it with one, but it does make two. So this goes both on the bottom and on the top of this pie, but we are going to put approximately 1/4 of this into here and then try to pat it down. There we go. So now I'm going to try to pat it into a crust-like shape in the pan, just kind of like when you make a graham cracker crust, except this is a nut crust, and it's supposed to go up the sides, probably not very far. Her picture has it relatively thin, and this is even a thinner, I mean a slightly larger pie dish. And my pie dish, by the way, has been very liberally buttered, so I'm not sure if it was quite all of it got damp enough. Some of it is sticking together better than others, but we're gonna go with this. All right. She says this is a much more casual, easy sort of dessert than a pecan pie. So that's what how her mother used it when she wanted a quicker pie. Probably because you don't have to make and roll out a traditional crust. I'm gonna use a little bit more and fill in some of my holes, and yeah. All right, we're gonna call that good. I'm going to bake this in my oven that's preheated. I'm gonna bake this in my oven that's preheated for 15 minutes. And it should not get too brown, maybe a little color around the edges. So first I'm gonna do the same thing in my other pie pan, and then we're gonna put them both in the oven, and we'll be back when those are done. So we're gonna melt some white chocolate with butter in a double boiler. So I just have my saucier here and a bowl that will fit in it, and enough water so that it won't touch the bottom here while it's boiling. You can use a glass bowl or a metal bowl as long as it's heat proof. I'm bringing it up to a boil real quick here, but I'm gonna turn it down as soon as it comes up to a boil. Excuse the barking noise if you hear it outside. So as soon as it comes to a boil, I'm just going to turn it down so that it doesn't like super boil. Okay, I'm gonna leave it at medium for right now. My butter is frozen, so this is going to take a little while. But I have some white chocolate chips here. I have a couple different kinds of white chocolate chips. I had some in the freezer, but it wasn't quite enough for the recipe. And we're going to just stir this and melt these together. This is sort of a standard way to melt chocolate. And she says that this may, I'm gonna get my hot pad so I can hold it so it doesn't move too much. She says this may seize up and sort of look clumpy and gross, but that is fine in this application. Normally that's pretty bad for regular chocolate, but you can see it's already starting to melt here, melt together. We just want to get it nice and smooth, hopefully. But we want it all to be melted. So I'm just gonna keep doing this. Okay, so this is pretty much melted, and yeah, somewhere in the last few seconds, it did seem to get all gross and separated. So I'm going to take this off. I've turned off the heat. I'm going to take this off. And we're going to let this maybe cool a little bit and see what happens while we set up to make the filling. Like, it was fine, although grainy, and then all of a sudden it seized up. So I'm glad, as you can see, it was fine, and now it's separated, like all the butter just separated from the chocolate. She says it's fine. So we're going to continue making the filling, and hopefully this will turn out okay. We're going to trust Vivian on this one. We'll meet you back to make the filling. I took my my crusts out of the oven after my timer. They look pretty much the same, but they smell nice and toasty, so that's good. And now we're gonna continue making the filling. So I have some egg yolks at room temperature, and I've shown you guys how I separate eggs before, so we're not gonna bother with that. And we're gonna whisk these. And we're going to add some dark brown sugar and whisk this together just until it's thoroughly combined. That looks great to me. And now we're going to put our white chocolate mixture in here and whisk it. My white chocolate mixture, as you remember, is rather separated. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that this works. So I'm gonna dump all of this in here. It is still very separated, but I've tried to keep it a little bit warm off the heat. So now is the moment of truth. Okay, that's good. I'm gonna clean up a little bit. Give myself some room to work. And now we're going to whisk in some heavy cream. There's a lot of butter and a lot of heavy cream. Heavy cream is also supposed to be at room temperature. I've just, that's great. When I took the egg yolks out, I went ahead and measured it and just left it on the countertop. So it's probably been about, I don't know, an hour. So there we go, heavy cream, butter, sugar, egg yolks, and white chocolate. And now we're going to mix some toasted and roughly chopped pecans. I toasted them first and then sort of roughly chopped them with a knife. These are accurately measured, unlike my other ones where I let my crew measure them. And we probably had a little bit more than the recipe called for, so just for your reference. And we're going to stir that together with some more flour and some salt. This is the only salt in the recipe, considering I used unsalted butter, but I'm just gonna use my hands because I do that. Get these all mixed together. And now I need a different utensil to fold that in here. So let me get a spatula. So I got just a spatula I used when I was melting the white chocolate, because the same ingredients, everything. And we're going to fold these in until everything is incorporated. So we don't want to do don't want to stir this for a really long time. I think that's just incorporated. And now we just divide this into our two crusts. So let me get that set up. I'm supposed to let this cool before we put the filling in. It's not completely cool, but I can touch it so it's not that hot. So now we're going to divide our filling between these two. So make these since my pans are slightly different, they're not going to be exactly equal, but I'm sure it will be fine. I say that a lot. It'll be fine. And really, in cooking, mostly it'll be fine. As long as you're not doing anything too awful, the results will generally be edible. Just don't add tarragon when you mean to add thyme. Okay, and now we're going to sprinkle the remaining streusel on top, approximately half of what's remaining on each of them. So I've put everything in here as it should be, and I have reduced the temperature on my oven to 325 degrees. And we're going to, let's see, bake them for about 40 minutes until they are golden brown and set in the middle. So we'll show you what they look like when we take them out of the oven. On this episode of Cooking the Books with Heather, you watched me make the Pecan-Chewy pie from Deep Run Roots. And we once again have my taste testers to taste it. My husband and I have already tasted it, so we can let you know what we think. But we're gonna see if they like it on camera for you.
We're not taste testers if you guys have already eaten it. You guys are the taste testers.
She's not a teenager yet. So, Annabelle's gonna take the first bite. My daughter over here, my teenager.
/ teenager.
It's clean. All right, so what do you think?
I see no difference between this one and yours.
No difference between this one and mine. Well, this has less of a filling. The filling is, there's a lot of nuts, and it's not, so a regular pecan pie has sort of a gooier filling with less nuts. This is kind of like almost like a bar cookie. So it's very, there's very heavy on pecans, but it's really good. It's tasty. The kids obviously really like it.
Oh, forgot to mention, you should subscribe.
You should subscribe if you're enjoying watching me cook and watching them taste. So yeah, apparently they really like it. It does seem much more like a more casual, less pie-like dessert. She serves it with chocolate ice cream, which I believe they would like to try next, but we decided to start with just the pie as it is. Anyway, it was not that hard. Double boiling, maybe. You know, some people have a problem with that. It's a little bit difficult, but you don't need special equipment for that. Chopping up the nuts, you can chop them up with your knife. That would be kind of annoying. I do recommend a nut chopper or a food processor for the fine nuts. But all in all, it was not that difficult. I've already wrapped up the other one and stuck it in the freezer. She says, by the way, this will keep for 3 days covered at room temperature. I'm probably gonna put mine in the refrigerator where it will last longer because Thanksgiving isn't still, more than 3 days away. Not too much more. And it will take
One day more.
And it will take us a while to eat it. But if you enjoyed watching me cook, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe and come back and watch me make something else.